In that neighborhood, Turkey, do you think they'll ever be ready to join the EU?
No, I don't now. Sorry, if I would have once said that I looked forward, not without misgiving, to Turkish membership of the European Union, and certainly was against some of the reasons given for opposing it, such as by His Holiness the Pope at one stage, who said that openly that a country that had Muslim culture was by definition not European. That's not true, or we better hope it's not true, say, of Bosnia and Herzegovina and Kosovo, which we liberated from an attempt at their extirpation by Christian fascists, and something I'm very proud of having advocated. But the problem with Turkey, I think, is a somewhat different one. At least under its new leadership, it's already becoming the originator of unusual demands on the European family of nations. For example, at a NATO meeting held not very long ago, where it had been decided that all the members of NATO wanted as their next spokesman Anders Rasmussen of Denmark. It had been agreed. At the last minute, the Turks veto it and say, we cannot have as head of NATO someone who isn't willing to censor his own press, something Danish law forbids, in the matter of some cartoons in a paper in Jutland. Well, this is unacceptable. That's how they behave before they're in Europe. I don't like to think how they would behave when in. So a friend of mine has a very rough way of putting this, but once I've said it, you won't be able to forget it either. He said, when did you last read a report from Istanbul that didn't describe Turkey as a bridge between East and West? You can't not read it, especially if it's about Istanbul. Orhan Pamuk does it. His novels are all about it. Turkish intellectuals and journalists begin their addresses to Western think tanks that way. Said my friend, it's not a bridge, it's a tunnel. Now forget that. European Union's borders will be with Iran and Iraq, actually with some of the better bits of Iraq, northern Kurdish autonomous Iraq, but we don't know for sure what can be imposed or inflicted on that area too in the future. It's not inspiring.
There's sort of an irony, though, because in many ways the party in power now is more democratic. The Kemalists are more illiberal in many ways, yet they're also secular. So where do you find your place to plant your flag?
Well, in some respects, the Kemalist secularists were more chauvinistic than Mr. Erdogan's party, which at least in its early days showed signs of being somewhat more flexible, especially on the Kurdish question. Very important. It's the largest. There is another people, non-Turkish, who dwell in Anatolia. It's taken the Turks a long time to admit it, but they have begun to, and some strides of that kind of thing. But it may just be the personality of Mr. Erdogan himself, but he's a bully. And I'm not sure how tightly wrapped he is either. By that I mean he goes into tantrums. He picked, no one dislikes Shimon Peres perhaps more than I do. But the fight that was picked in public with him by Mr. Erdogan at Davos was purely vulgar and thuggish and opportunist. The remarks he made on the commemoration of the Armenian genocide in April earlier this year were scandalous. He said if the United States Congress didn't cease troubling him on the matter, which we're obliged to do, he would deport the remaining Armenians, ones who still do live in Turkey, who have come there as workers from the Armenian Republic neighboring. Extraordinary. Imagine any other European leader saying that about a national minority.
He denied that Bashir is a mass murderer.
Well, he
said no Muslim could commit genocide.
His relations with Iran are far too sickly and warm, as with China. And it is possible that the Ergenekon trial, this massive show trial that's now being brought nearer to a court in Turkey, is the unmasking of a reactionary military Kemalist plot. There have been plots to overthrow the elected government in Turkey before from that quarter. It's possible that is so, but it's also possible that it's an occasion to shut down all dissent. And I would not want to say that I was confident. It wasn't the latter. And certainly a man who has openly said, while running for office, that democracy is like getting on a bus or a train. You ride it till you get to where you want to go, and then you get off. Some form of coded reassurance, I suppose, to the more unreconstructed Islamists in his electorate. But I don't like the sound of that either. So for now, I think I mentioned this concept before, since one's always going to regret one outcome, there's no possibility of not having a regret, whichever choice one takes. I think I'd rather regret keeping Turkey out of the European Union than regret having it in, with veto power.